Hey everybody, welcome to Help Solve the Case. It is Christine here. We are trying new software, and today we are talking about the DNA debacle in the Alex Murdaugh case. And I want to thank you guys so much for being supporters of this channel. I thought I would do a live today. We're testing stuff out, as I mentioned, but I have a lot to go through in this case. I was frankly shocked at what happened in court. I think it has a lot of implications. And as I talk about on this channel, we have to look at it not only from the police perspective, from the prosecution perspective, from the constitutional perspective, and how it will affect cases going forward. And I have a lot of notes. So I appreciate you being here. Let's see what I think is going to happen with this. I would love to see your comments, and let's just talk about it, because I'm really flabbergasted and I'm really upset. So in the hearing, we had the motion for the hearing, which I had gone over in a prior video. And basically, my understanding, it was very short, that there had been some fingernail testing in this case that had been done, and there was extract that was remaining. Hey, whoever's here, let me know in the comments. Thanks for stopping by. There was some extract left from that. And to my understanding, I didn't see the DNA report, but there were clippings left that had not been processed by the state. And the defense was asking to send some of the material, I believe it was the untested material, out to the third-party vendor for SNP testing, or to send the previously tested material, some of the extract, out to the vendor. And you may or may not know, I'm a retired police detective and sergeant. If you're new to the channel, thanks for being here. I am also a current law enforcement expert, testifying in everything police procedure for both prosecution and the defense. And I'm a forensic genetic genealogist. So the DNA is very important to me. And I can't believe, I will say it again, I really can't believe what will happen. So they went back and forth. They talked about a lot of stuff. And basically, I believe the judge handed the police function away from the police and just handed it over willy-nilly to a vendor that is not part of the police ecosystem. And I believe, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that that is setting precedent that is going to be very problematic in cases going forward. So let me get into it a little bit, and I will apologize in advance. I got my notes because I have a lot of areas to talk about. Please stay until we're done, because we're going to talk about all of this and how this may affect all of our cases going forward. We've also seen what they talked about STR testing. I've got a video on the channel about the issues with the potential STR testing, and we've got cases that are coming up potentially for retrial. And how is this all going to affect it? You may or may not know Alex Murdaugh is getting a new trial, and this is just one part of the motions that they were talking about, that they're putting into place for this retrial and what he's asking for. Okay. Typically, in a case, and this is the craziest part, and I will just tell you, I'm really upset. Typically, in a case, police evidence that's collected in a criminal case is collected by the police, and it's custodied by the police. That has always been a police function. And now they are letting somebody else handle it. And that has brought up issues. Typically, in a case, when we're talking about DNA, the first thing that is done is they send it for STR. They have to extract it. They have to take it off the material that it was in. If it's blood or fluid or anything like that, that's easier to work with. But if it's on, they talked about a shirt, they talked about some jeans. If it's on an item, they have to get it off the item. They then have to process it. And typically, the first test is STR to put it in CODIS. And there's a reason for that. If the feds get involved, which they've been getting involved in more cases lately, who knows why? If the feds get involved, there's a requirement that it has to go through the CODIS process before going to forensic genetic genealogy. And going through the CODIS process with the STR means it has to fit the CODIS standards to be entered into CODIS. Hopefully y'all are with me there because it can get a little convoluted. In this case, they had pulled a sample, and to my understanding, it was like 90, I've got it in my notes, like 99% Maggie and 1% or less or more unknown male. And I understand from the defense perspective why they wanted to test it, why they wanted to do something with it, because if it wasn't Alex, then who was it? Exculpatory evidence that can assist the defense. Here on the channel, we talk about the prosecution, we talk about the defense, we talk about the judge, and we talk about the jury. We talk about the Constitution and everybody being able to have their constitutional rights. So in this case, the defense wants to examine that DNA to see if there is, one, to verify it, and two, to see, is there any exculpatory information that could help the client? That happens all the time. It's reasonable, but it normally doesn't get sent out the door to someone or something that is not a law enforcement agency, especially around STR testing and primary extraction. I am blown away. In this case, they had the sample that had already been tested. To my understanding, there was reference in court that they had 3 alleles from this unknown male, which appears, and I'm not the biologist, you can feel free to comment in the notes, I'm not the biologist, not enough for the CODIS standard to be entered into CODIS. But they were talking about doing forensic genetic genealogy. Could they do something with it? Could this external vendor do something with it and potentially get forensic genetic genealogy? Because if there is no match in CODIS, or if it is not eligible for CODIS, can we do something with forensic genetic genealogy to get to a close family of origin or to the identification of the person themselves? Okay, that's where they're going. I support that. I just don't support what just happened with the judge. All right. And if you have any questions, please put the comments in there. Hopefully I will see them. We're getting used to this whole setup. Okay. So typically in a case, so in this case, they have this already tested material, which was believed to be going out to see if they could amplify it, enhance it. The extraction, they had extracted, they call extract. The judge kept calling it leftovers, which sometimes I talk about that. They had the extract, the leftovers that the company was going to see what they could do with it. And they also had this untested fingernail clipping material that may or may not have been tested. So the state was offering in this case to do the STR testing to output the material needed. They were going to take it from the raw material and output the extract or the biological material to quantify it to see what was there, because they had very little over on, we'll call it sample 1 and sample 2. And typically that's done through the process. The law enforcement agency labs have been doing this since late 90s, early 90s, late 90s. They're accredited. It's been tested in court, STR testing, extraction, all this stuff has been done by the police, just like police work, for a very long time. Okay, I started in police work in the late 80s. All right, we've been copping for a long time. So to have somebody come in to the law enforcement function, they've upset the apple cart here. And what happened was, so the state was arguing that they want to take the uncut clippings, and there was arguments about what was going to happen to this material. And the defense said, we want to take sample 2, all that material, and we want the vendor to do it because we're not sure if it will be destroyed during the quantification process, which is, yes, it can happen. But who's been doing this since the beginning of time? I don't know. I'm not the law enforcement lab personnel. And basically, the judge said, no, we are going to let the external lab quantify it and work with it and do the entire thing. And then we'll decide what is going to happen to it. And that puts the process in danger for a number of reasons. So hopefully we're clear on that process. This material belongs to the police. The police should be, the police and the prosecution, in my opinion, and if you want a formal opinion, right, this is my personal opinion. If you want a formal opinion, you can retain me and I'll give you a formal opinion for court. But in my personal opinion, this is the police work. This has always been the police work. This is the police lab. This is the prosecution. And nobody should be doing things that should belong to the police, things that the prosecution and the police should have control over it. Should they have a right to examine it? Absolutely. It belongs in the state custody. And one of the things that they talked about is the fact that this, and again, I don't know, I was just listening, this external lab was not accredited to do STR work and to do work, which is typically the primary process of processing this evidence. So does that mean it cannot go into CODIS? And if it cannot go into CODIS, then theoretically, according to the Fed guidelines, it can't be used for FGG. So we've got all kinds of domino effect here. So my question is, why did the judge give this first part to a private laboratory instead of leaving it with the state, with the police? The state said, we're going to quantify this. We will let you know how much is here. And then we can make the determination if we go to STR or if we go straight to FGG. And again, I don't know how the feds or the Fed guidelines have been involved in this case prior. So the judge was saying, well, look, the defense asked for it, kind of like, in my opinion, states stay out of it. Look, this is the defense's thing and they want it and I'm going to give it to them. But I don't agree that that's necessarily right. Okay. They wanted SLED, which is the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, I believe. They actually had the commissioner, the legal counsel in the courtroom, and they also had the quality assurance person in the courtroom. I don't know how they knew or whatever they knew, but they had those people in here in the courtroom. I don't know if it was random or they expected this challenge or what. And they were speaking on behalf of police work. And that is one of my primary complaints here. And I am a little personally biased on it I will explain the other side of it, but police work should be police work. And there's a number of caveats where that can get you in trouble. I'm going through my notes here. The defense requested this. Now, let me bring this back to, we are at a new trial. We are at a new trial. And we did have some language where the state was saying, this is a new trial, so we have to file all these new motions, and we have to go through this new process, and we have to get a new jury, and we have to do all this new stuff. But yet, it wasn't a new trial when it came to the defense's argument about adding the prior testimony, okay, which goes against the consideration for the Fifth Amendment self-incrimination, okay? So the state's saying, well, it's not a new trial for that, but it is a new trial for all these motions and all this different stuff. And talking about, is it a new trial? That means that there could be a new defense strategy. There could be a new state strategy. They are going to redo their case potentially based on what they now know. They've had a preview. Okay, they've already watched the movie. I talk about being Netflix or whatever. They've already watched the show. They're doing, what is it? I talk about sports, you know, when they play the tape, right? You watch the tape and you watch everybody, you watch the offense and or the other team, and you see how they're doing. And you also play your stuff back and you see where you could have done better and where you did great. Okay, so you know what you're going to repeat and you know what you're going to work on. And so the state was like, look, you know, we're just going to do this. And the defense said, look, you've had this material for all these years and you didn't do anything with it. Well, the state felt that they didn't need it. And the state, typically, there are defense requests all the time to examine state material, state evidence. Happens all the time. And it usually doesn't go, when it comes to respectfully DNA or whatever, it usually doesn't go outside. This preliminary testing and getting it to a certain point happens from the police. And the state was saying, you know, we'll be really happy to do this. So just the fact that it hadn't been tested, I don't believe, gave the judge a right just to hand it out of town. Okay, speaking about SLED. So we had the lady, the quality assurance lady, and I did not catch her name, talking about quality standards. And they were throwing back, these lawyers and the judge were going back and forth talking about a lot of stuff. They were talking about this ability to put it in CODIS and what the FBI quality standards are surrounding a lab having to be accredited for STR. And what I heard during the hearing is that outside vendor is not qualified for STR to meet the standards to go into CODIS. So the state was saying, look, we'll just do what we normally do, and then it's protected, and then we can follow the normal steps. But the defense kept arguing that there was going to be this destruction of this potential sample during quantification. So who is the better choice here? The folks that are not accredited, that typically work on FGG and don't work on STR, to my knowledge, versus the lab that has always worked on STR and meets the standards that needs to go into CODIS. I mean, I would hope that everybody would want to know who done it. And if it wasn't Alex and the person is potentially in CODIS, we would want to know it. Okay. So doesn't meet the standards, but okay, we're just going to send it out anyhow. They also talked about these 3 alleles and the fact that this DNA came back more than 99% Maggie and roughly 1% this unknown male. All right, well, what are they going to be able to do with that? That can't go into CODIS. So are they saying that this lab can try to enhance that profile and do something with it? Or are they just talking about the untested fingernail clippings, right? I'm not opposed to sending out material that has already been worked on, but I'm certainly opposed to material just going out that the state collected. It belongs to the state case, and the state hasn't even been able to look at it yet. And one of the reasons for that is, and they talked about it in the hearing, the state or the defense doesn't have to disclose material that they do not intend to call at trial. And I want to make that very specific because now the defense has the entire second clippings, the second sample, and they are sending it out for quantification, for STR, for FGG, whatever. And if they don't like the result, or they just get a whim and they don't want to present it in their case, what was said in court is they don't have to do it. They don't have to release it. They now own it as part of their case. I hope everybody understands that. When the state has evidence, regardless of whether they're going to use it or not, and again, I'm not the lawyer, I'm just talking about the cases I've been in, because of the potential for exculpatory information, you get a chance to look at it. But now it's completely gone. It's completely gone. And they get nothing. They don't get to look at it. And we're going to talk about looking at it because we've already had problems with third-party vendors saying proprietary and not giving us an ability to look at what we need to look at. Okay, let me go through my notes here. So I don't know if they're looking at the 3 alleles or what they're going to do with the 3 alleles, if they're going to try to amplify it, they're going to try to do imputation or whatever is going to happen there. But I have a big question here. Who do you think, and you have to put yourself in all the positions here. You have to put yourself in the prosecution's position, in the defense's position, in the court position, right? It's state versus someone. State versus someone. It's not defense versus someone. It's state versus someone. Indictments, probable cause hearings, probable cause to arrest based on evidence. And that has just been taken away. That control for the control of the evidence and the case has just been taken away. So who owns the evidence in a criminal case? If the state is bringing the action, doesn't that mean that they control their data? I will tell you, and I'm sorry, like this enrages me because I've been involved in these investigations daily since 2021 and the shenanigans that have gone on here. I have seen civilians tell a sworn law enforcement agent that they are not allowed to look at the material in their own investigation. A civilian telling the law enforcement officer that, who has a duty to investigate the case, that they are not allowed to look at their own material. Okay. And we haven't even gotten to Kohberger yet. We haven't even talked about the lack of transparency there. Okay. So why couldn't SLED just quantify it? Why are we handing the police function to a company? Okay, are we going to hand out the K9 team to a company? Are we going to hand out the dispatchers to a company? How do y'all like calling tech support when it doesn't even belong to the company? How do you like that? And I'm ticked, okay, because I my blood, sweat, and tears here in the police department for this function, managing these divisions. What about the SWAT team? How would you like to outsource that to a third party? So when the shit is going down You don't know who's coming for you. How do you like that perspective? I don't like that perspective. I want the people that have been trained through the academy, that meet the state standards, that go to ongoing training, that have to show their CV in court. They have to be qualified. They have to be background checked. Okay. Not just some random that we can't know anything about. I'm really hot about this. Okay. All right. So, we've lost potentially the CODIS opportunity to put this data in CODIS. And does this mean there's a precedent here now? There's a precedent here. And what I mean by precedent is once a judge makes a ruling, if you follow these cases, and we talk about these cases, that's why I like reading the pleadings. I like reading the judge's decisions. When we quote our, like Miranda, that's a precedent. When we quote Terry, that's a precedent. All right. Riley, Carpenter, those are all precedents. We talked about the cell tower dump. That's a precedent. This judge just sent a precedent that a defense team can have access to untested police evidence and send it wherever. So that means potentially in any case, a good defense attorney can come in and say, ha, 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 don't touch nothing. I'm going to send it to my people. And if I send it to my people, I'm going to only decide if I'm going to let you look at it. Am I tracking? Like, does it make sense? So how does that work in a criminal prosecution? This is what's important with precedent here. When folks don't understand or they don't take the time to follow the track all the way down the road or to think ahead, the ramifications of this, I hope that it gets appealed. I'm considering reaching out to the prosecutor. So what happens? Okay, now in this case, also something to consider. It's my understanding that the defense is paying for this. So what happens when a defendant can't pay for it? If it's private pay versus court pay, right? Like public defender. What if there's no budget and it doesn't get approved? So that means only certain defendants, now we're on the defense side, only certain defendants have the ability to send their stuff out to get their stuff tested. What happens there? How much does our criminal, because it's way more expensive over there than it is in our government labs where they do this all day, every day. Okay. What happens to the cost of our criminal justice system? Does that mean more cases don't get prosecuted? Does that mean more defenses don't get defended properly? I don't know. Like this is really, really crazy here. Now, with it moving to a private vendor, there is more than just the vendor's bill. Okay. Additional expert witnesses, right? Because this company is not in the town. Okay. If SLED tested it, SLED would testify about it. And SLED is closer in South Carolina than somewhere else. Travel, shipping, chain of custody, litigation over accreditation, hearings about consumption. I'm reading from my notes. Admissibility hearings, discovery fights, proprietary method fights, replication testing, independent bioinformatics experts, additional prosecutors, defense experts, and potential appeals. Because the state has been doing this for frickin' ever. And now we just brought this whole kit and caboodle into it that has not been very successful and very transparent, in my opinion, in these other cases. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Now, some things that these folks may not be considering, and I hope that they do consider it, and I hope that it is raised. I'm going to hop a little over to the defense here, because we heard in several cases, it's proprietary. We don't have to give up our business practices. We don't have to talk about any of that. Well, if you're a state agent acting on behalf of the state, I bet you will. All right. And I believe that a good defense attorney or good prosecutor will argue, depending on which side we're on here, that if you're going to replace SLED, then you better be prepared to document all the documents, all the SOP, all the process, all the backgrounds, all the training, just like the SLED agents do for impeachment and all that stuff. And I love that. I go to town on that stuff all the time. So this stuff that happened in some of those prior cases about proprietary, no, state agent acting on behalf of the state, search and seizure, constitutional issues. Okay. Right. Am I happy that it went out? No. But on the other hand, yes, I am, because I'm going to fight tooth and nail to get the transparency that we didn't have in the prior case. Okay. This means that the lab could technically be functioning as an investigative arm of the government. Okay. Because they just replaced the quantification and potentially the STR. That's normally the government's responsibility. And I don't know. I'm sure there was a big old smile. Woohoo! Guess what we got? Guess what we're going to get in the future? Well, you're going to get a whole bunch of other stuff in the future too. Okay. Let's see. I just don't think that the data should disappear. There were some comments made that industry specific or whatever that I don't believe were accurate. I'm not going to get into it in this video. Let's see. We talked about precedent. Okay. So now I believe that this is going to be coming in where defense and defendants are going to come into all kinds of cases and require this based on the precedent. Okay. They're going to talk about who needs to do what first. Are we going to lose STR? Are we going to lose CODIS because of this precedent? Talk about the three alleles. Okay, let's see. So what happens if the defense decides not to use this information? What happens? And the state doesn't have access to that. What do you guys think about that? I'm just looking at my notes. I mean, we can't, I don't even know if we could put it in CODIS. What about accountability? What about the fact that it doesn't meet the guidelines? Do you think, and this is one of the things here I have in my notes, currently the FGG process, a lot of the FGG process is outsourced. And since 2021, I've been advocating for it to be brought into, well, let me say, not brought into, it should be occurring in the police department. That's why I started initially with my training for police agents to be doing this investigation. And I talk about FGG being like a DUI. In a DUI, there's a lab component, but it is an officer doing the roadside field sobriety tests, administering the breathalyzer, showing up in court and doing all that. We just don't outsource that. And that's why I'm saying, like, could you imagine if the dispatching for the police department was sent out to a company here or somewhere else, and the K9 and why do we even have police departments anymore if we're not going to have trained people that are in control of this process? And especially in FGG, it is we just can't have this. We're not giving information. If you want to accept the state responsibility to be a state agent and perform investigative work, then by God, you better be treated exactly like that cop. And your background is going to be investigated since the beginning of time. Who works on these forensic genetic genealogy cases? What happens if there's a conflict that the data turns up and the family turns up in the family tree that it's somebody's cousin? What's the conflict protocol there? Who's looking over somebody's shoulder? Now we've got this STR issue. Well, what did we have in the STR video about the software issue? Who is sitting in that private company that is acting like your law enforcement agency? And I see your comments and I understand what the case is and the conspiracy or whatever you want to call this. We're calling it constitutional issues. Who is sitting over the shoulder, first of all, vetting these companies, making sure that your dollars are being spent properly? Who's making sure that every employee is being background checked completely? Who's making sure that their computers aren't being accessed by third parties? When all this remote volunteer, put it in the pool, everybody's going to work on this stuff. Like, who's doing all this stuff? Who's doing that? There has to be stronger arguments against all this stuff. I understand that our police are underfunded and they're behind the game in some of this stuff, but they have to have the same, just like Cellbrite, okay? You got to get your people trained. And these companies have to fall under, they are acting as an agent of law enforcement. I'm really hot under the collar here, and I just don't agree with it. And I'm very shocked. I'm very shocked and surprised. I don't know if you guys have any comments or anything, but we seem to be in a society where we don't want to do the hard stuff anymore. We just want to send it out. I mean, people can't go to the McDonald's or whatever. They got to DoorDash it. And people don't want to, don't have the capability for. And these are people's lives at stake. These prosecutions and stuff, and people complain about, why was the prosecution not done this way? And why was the prosecution not done this way? And why was the defense not done this way? And that's why I believe, that's why I'm so passionate. I'm here on this channel. That's why I'm going live about this. And I probably didn't even say all the things because I'm so hot. So I really would love your comments. I don't know if your comments are here. I'm not seeing it. I'm just new using this software. But please put your comments below, because this is going to, I believe, blow up in a lot of cases. And we've got to get more control over who's doing what and why they're doing it, and process and procedures in place so we don't have all these crazy cases and these crazy outcomes. And that's why I'm here. So I don't know if you have any questions. I appreciate your support for the channel. Thank you, everybody that loves me reading pleadings. I will go back. I will read the pleadings. I've got more stuff. I want to look into the misconduct on this issue. I really would love, if you want to become a member and you want to subscribe to the channel, that would be great. If you want to subscribe to the Help Solve the Case community, where we've got all kinds of stuff, all the documents, everything on the cases, I would love to have you there. And I hope you like it just as much as I do. But aside from being entertained, and aside from the impetus on a specific case, like, this is this is going to affect all our cases going forward. That's why I read the pleadings, because these precedents, it's not just the one case. It's not the decision in the one case. It's affecting every single case going forward. And we have to take a stand in that, and we have to play a part in that. And I'm just trying to raise the alarm. I'm just trying to speak up on it in what I see, because I'm working in these cases on a daily basis. So thank you so much for being here. I don't know if you commented or not. I'm not seeing anything, but yeah, she just gave the farm away as far as I'm concerned. And I don't like it, and I don't agree with it. And I got to make some contacts. I got to make some calls and see what can be done about it. I would love your 2 cents. All right. I will see you on the next one.